Hi, everybody, and Happy New Year! Yay! I'm finally here. This is my first book review video of the year and period, right? So, I just wanted everyone to know why I did this was because I was always watching reviews on makeup, and my daughter got me watching people eat, like those mukbangs and stuff like that. But I never would come across like book and movie reviews, so I was like, well, maybe that's an open door. I don't know how successful it's gonna be, but hey, why not give it a try and make fun of it and having a good time while I'm at it. So that's the reason for my channel. I'm about to read you. Doesn't mean people, it just means books. So the first book that I chose to start my YouTube page was a book that my director from work, she suggested that we all start reading diversity and culturally books. And so this book was a book that she chose. And so I didn't want it at first, but then I was like, well, maybe I should try, you know, this book. I wanted another book called White Fragility. So I ended up choosing Stamped. So, I missed my camera. Stamped by Jason Reynolds and Ibram Kendi. Hopefully I pronounced his name right. And so it's a book before this book, and this is the remix. So there's one before Stamped, and then there's Stamped. And so when I say this book is so good, I could not put it down at all. I like kept reading certain chapters over so that like it would sink in because it was that good of a book. It was just that good. It was that informative. And I was like, everybody needs to read this. All races, all nationalities, everybody should read this because there were things in here that I never heard. This is not your ordinary like history book. And they always say that in the book, this is not a history book, but yes, it is. Like social studies teachers, middle, high school, college level, everybody should get this book for their students and have like a read along or virtual read with their students because it is that good of a book. It causes a lot of dialogue if you read it. It causes a lot of conversation if people are open to it. It is controversial, but I mean, it's the truth. It's the history of African Americans coming over here, and it's just the truth about racism and how it all started. So, without further ado, let's get into the book. So, how I figure I'll do this, I will just skim through the book, give you just like things that I highlighted. Look, all these, not all of these. I'm not going through all of these because it's a lot, and I don't want you to leave me in time. So, I'm just gonna go through the book and some things that stuck out to me. I'll talk about it. So it's Stamped: Racism, Antiracism, and You. A remix of the National Book Award winning Stamped from the Beginning. So Stamped from the Beginning was the one before this one. So the way they detailed these books, this book, I don't know about the other one, but this book is in 5 sections, and they're all related by year. So section 1 is from 1450 to 1728. Section 2 is 1743 to 1826. Section 3 is 1826 to 1879. Section 4 is 1868 to 1963. And then Section 5 is 1963 till today. And when I say this book blew my mind, it did. So, okay, I got my notes because I had to take notes on them. I didn't want to mess up nothing. I didn't want to say the wrong thing in these, trying to review this book. And the disclaimer, I'm not sponsored by anybody. I'm not getting money off of this. This is just for fun. I'm not here to make fun of anybody, to talk about anybody's nationality, race, anything like that. This is not what that's for. This is just review because people always say, what should I read? What can I read? What y'all reading? This is this channel. So this is a book. Y'all want to read something? I got something for you to read. I got a whole bunch of books for you to read. So, just starting off. So I always wonder, where did racism come from? Where did it start? Blah, blah, blah. So, it says the book starts with Prince Henry and his father, King John of Portugal. I had to write that down. King John of Portugal, and Prince Henry was jealous, and he wanted the Muslims treasures and monies and things like that. So he talked his dad, King John, into taking the Muslims hostage and making them slaves or whatever to get their stuff, really just basically robbing them. Okay, so then from them came a guy named Gomez Ins de Zerara. Gomes Ins de Zerara. Okay. He wrote a book called The Chronicle of Discovery and Conquest of Guinea, which is a slave book, basically, and it swept through the colonies and the nation, and everybody read this book. Was like, oh yeah, this is a great book to read. This is it. This is teaching us about how to capture slaves and blah blah blah, and how to thinking of the. So this man is like the first racist. Like Prince Henry and his father were not racist. They just believed in owning slaves, which is what they did back then. Anyways, they owned slaves in the 1400s and blah blah blah. But Gomez, he actually started the thinking process of racism and all of the theories of black. We're gonna get into all that, okay? So on one of the pages, page 5, if you want to read along with me, if you have the book, Prince Henry nor King John of Portugal was given the title of world's first racist because the truth is, capturing people wasn't an unusual thing back then, just a fact. So Gomez Ins de Zerora, his name is real messed up. Zerora was the one who put that whole thinking of racism and that black people were beneath the Puritan way and all that stuff. It's a mess. It's a mess, but it's a mess. So going on. So then there comes the climate theory and the curse theory. The climate theory in the book under the section of section 1, the climate theory just says, and this came from Aristotle, okay, that Africans, I'm gonna just read it. This actually comes from Aristotle, who questioned whether Africans were born this way or if the heat of the continent made them inferior. Okay, right. And then the curse theory was that in 1577, after noticing the Inuit people in northeastern freezing cold Canada were darker than the people living in the hotter South, English traveler writer George Best determined, conveniently for all parties interested in owning slaves, that it couldn't have been climate that made darker people inferior. Instead, determined that Africans were in fact cursed. And we were cursed because of Ham in the Bible has sex on the ark. God wills that Ham's descendants will be dark and disgusting, and the whole world will look at them as symbols of trouble. That's the curse theory. There's two theories, climate theory and the curse theory. It would branch off into a ridiculous idea, the strange concept that because Africans were cursed and because, according to these Europeans, they needed enslavement in order to be saved and civilized, the relationship between slave and master was loving. Just breathe. Like Ayana says, breathe so your mind can think. Right. I know. It's a lot. This book is a lot. Like, I had to put it down. I couldn't. Some of it, I was like, nah, man. This. Who were they? Okay, who were they? Who? Anyway, so the Puritans. The Puritans had theories too, and according to the Puritans, they were better, literally, than everybody. Okay, the Puritans were better than Native Americans. The Anglican English people who weren't Puritans. Everyone else who wasn't a Puritan, especially African people. I don't know who gave them the authority, Lord, but they don't have it. Okay, not over us. This couldn't have happened in 2000. It would have been a whole different type of story. So then we're going on into the book. So there were these philosophers who made up all of these theories about African people and how they were less than and how other nationalities were more inferior. And so Baxter, who was this dude? Richard Baxter, he was a British minister. He noted that he believed slavery was helpful for African people. He even said that there were voluntary slaves, as in Africans who wanted to be slaves, so that they could be baptized. What was he drinking when he wrote that? Okay. Mad Dog 2020. There was also work by a great English philosopher named John Locke, and he believed that the most unblemished, purest, perfect minds belonged to whites, which basically meant Africans had dirty brains. And this Italian philosopher named Lucilla Vanini, he believed Africans were born on a different Adam and had a different creation story. Of course, this would mean that they were a different species, which I'm going to get to that at the end of this book. It was kind of like saying, or to him proving, that Africans weren't actually human. Like they were maybe animals or monsters or aliens, but not human, at least not like whites. Get this book, okay? Get this book. I'm just skimming through it. I'm not even giving you all of what it really truthfully, honestly is. I'm skimming through and it's deep with just the skimming of the through. Moving on, a new set of racist codes. So this chapter 9, is about a racist wonderkind, and so it's just giving what the people, what Zarura made up as a racist code. So kind of like Jim Crow, but take it further back to the 1400s. Okay, so no interracial relationships, tax imported captives, classify natives and blacks the same way you will horses and hogs in the tax code, meaning they were literally classified as livestock and not as humans. Blacks can't hold office. All property owned by a slave is sold, which of course contributes to black poverty. Oh, and white indentured servants who were freed are awarded 50 acres of property, of course contributing to white prosperity. I'm just reading y'all. I'm just telling y'all what these men, what these great guys who wrote this book found, and we sitting here reading it. And it's just sad that this stuff is back then, but it's also now. I'm glad my director wanted us to read this, but it hurts to read it. So, upliftsuation. I'm sure you've heard of the word or the phrase upliftsuation, but it comes a lot in W.E. Du Bois. It ain't Du Bois. Don't get on this comment. You don't pronounce the N. Du Bois. He had the upliftsuation mind frame. So that's just where black people behaved admirably. They could prove all the stereotypes about them were wrong. This strategy was called upliftsuation. It was racist because it was said was that black people couldn't be accepted as themselves and that they had to fit into some kind of white mold to deserve their freedom. Basically, we had to act a certain way to be admitted. And this is a part of what W.E. Du Bois, before he changed his thinking, he thought that we should all make a way to fit into the white culture. Like, y'all need to do this and do that in order to basically tap dance for the white man, type dance for the Caucasian man in order to be accepted. And we have to change this in order to be accepted, which basically is what upliftsuation is. Okay. So in this book, I'll do honorable mentions. So in this book, they talk about Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Abe Lincoln, and all speaks about how they ran for presidency, what their thoughts were on slavery and, the Democratic, Republican, blah, blah, blah. It's very good. It's very informative. Things that I have never known, all in here, okay? William Garrison and his group called the American Anti-Slavery Society, it speaks on them. See, I'm reading my notes. It talks about Nat Turner. I ain't ashamed. I got notes. It talks about Nat Turner and his revolutionary, that he did, his revolt. This book is so deep. I'm telling you, you have to go and purchase it. No, I ain't getting no money back from this. I'm just out here trying to inform y'all and educate y'all. This book is very good. So I'm gonna keep going on because I don't want to waste y'all's time, and I don't want y'all to click off my video because this is my first video. Okay, so here in chapter 12, okay, there was a scientist. His name was Samuel Morton, the father of American anthropology, who was measuring the skulls of humans and determined that white people had bigger skulls and therefore greater intellectual capacity, which, by the way, was how I combated being told all my life, this is the person writing this, that he had a big head, so because you had a big head, that means you were a scientist or you was this great person. So white people basically had bigger skulls than Africans, and therefore they were smarter and wiser than a black person. Nothing to say. I don't have no comment. I don't want nobody to be like, she got hate crime on her page. I'm shutting up. They ain't saying nothing. So then he talks about Andrew Johnson and basically how he reversed all of Lincoln's promises for the Confederate States to bar blacks from voting and making sure their emancipation was upheld only if black people didn't break laws. So there were the black codes and the social codes. The book talks about all of those codes. Very informative. All of that stuff. What else did it say about those black codes? I think that was it for the black codes. Don't talk about me, okay? And William Lloyd Garrison, and how he was a writer or whatever. So he advocated, because he worked for a Quaker abolitionist newsletter basically, and so how he tried to inform the blacks and other people about how to basically vote for our rights or advocating for our rights and different things like that. It speaks on him. It speaks on black empowerment, women empowerment in the day. Oh yeah, this book is so good. You will not be able to put it down. The Battle of the Black Brains. Now this is where William Du Bois, it speaks of him. Now this book talks a lot about him more than anybody else in the book. He's in here a lot of times because he was called the king of upliftsuation. The king, it says the king of, and I can do anything they can do. So that's uplift. So I can do anything they can do. The king of, I'm like you, will you love me? Making him without a doubt the black king of assimilation. So W.E.B. Du Bois was known as the black king of assimilation. It says Du Bois gobbled up the lessons on how to win white people over, and after his time at Fisk, Du Bois was able to put what he learned about assimilation into practice, even though black people didn't take to him at this time. I never knew this. They did not take to him until years later, almost to when he was about to die, was when black people finally, because he changed his thinking, they were not for how he thought. They didn't like how he thought at the beginning of his advocacy and all that stuff. They were like, we're not changing. We're not doing this. No, Marcus Garvey, he's in here. Him and Du Bois butted heads a lot because they did not agree on how to gain African Americans their rights and their freedoms. This book is wonderful, y'all, for real. I'll keep saying it, but I'm serious. If anything, you want to add a book to your repertoire of books, this is one to add. Du Bois even went so far as to blame black people for being mistreated. He blamed them for fighting back, which meant he blamed them for being lynched. For instance, when white people challenged the 15th Amendment, the right to vote, by attaching an educational qualification to what was supposed to be a freedom for all, Du Bois, an educated man, found fault in the black rage. I never knew that. What are you doing? So Du Bois, Booker T, the Shining Star of Tuskegee Institute, a college that cranked out black brilliance, believed this too, and even in a dying Frederick Douglass did. And the lady that put them all in their place was Ida B. Wells. Bang, women rights. She was an investigative journalist who did the necessary research to expose the inconsistencies in the data. So she was like, we're not going for it. Y'all can have it, blah, blah, blah. This book further goes on, talks about Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was a heavyweight fighter back in like 1908, and he basically beat up everybody, all the Caucasian guys, right? So the white Caucasian people, oh, they mad. His match was over in Germany, and they just didn't like that he was winning. So they did whatever they could, basically, to undermine him and to give them a white hope, which was the white hope was Tarzan. Okay, so in chapter 16, you can see it. You can't see it. Jack Johnson versus Tarzan. Never knew this. This book, y'all, this book is deep. This book is deep. Jack Johnson was a champ who acted like a champ. Fur coats and diamonds, and early god of flash. And the biggest spike in the heart of white America. Jack Johnson's wife was white. Right. So basically the plot of the Book of Tarzan was a white child named John Clayton is orphaned in Central Africa. John is raised by apes. They change his name to Tarzan, which means white skin. Tarzan becomes the best hunter and a warrior, better than all the Africans. Eventually, he teaches himself to read. In the sequels and subsequent stories, Tarzan protects a white woman named Jane from being ravished by Africans. Tarzan protects a white woman named Jane from being ravaged by Africans. So, this explains that whole Jack Johnson versus Tarzan. Never knew it. Never knew. I never knew this stuff. This is and I'm just giving you a synopsis. I'm not even going in detail because I don't have the time for it. But go in detail. Oh, I missed a note. So, back to W.E.B. Du Bois. There was a guy named Franz Boas. He was from Germany, and he is the one who started W.E.B. Du Bois to change his mind because he came from Germany and he was advocating for German rights. And so he was wondering how could a black man not feel more sympathy towards his culture. And so when he spoke and he didn't dumb it down and he didn't mummify the black struggle, it made W.B. Du Bois change his thinking. That was what sparked the change of his thinking, was this man. Okay, so let me go on to 127 so I can get you guys back to whatever it is that you're doing this evening. Because I know y'all got something to do, but y'all about to tune into me because you love me. I know. I know you know. I skipped all of that. That's how I didn't talk about Roosevelt. He's in here too. When he took office, he kicked 167 black soldiers. He kicked them out of the army with no money because he said that some black soldiers had killed a cop and they killed a cop and a restaurant owner. And so he kicked all these soldiers out of the army without no money. History. And remember, this is not a history book. That's what they keep saying. This is not a history book. Yes, it is a history book. Get it. Read it. Dissect it. Take in what you want. Leave out what you don't. So, chapter 19, Can't Sing and Dance, Write It Away, Du Bois. It talks about him in the Harlem Renaissance phase when he was assisting young artists to speak their truths and things like that. He advocated for all of them. Then there's some more honorable mentions. I'm not going to go into them, which are JFK, Lyndon B. Johnson, Malcolm X, Alex Haley. It talks about how Alex Haley wrote Malcolm X's life story. Martin Luther King. I really don't talk about him much because we always hear about him, but he's in the book a little bit. It talks about the NAACP and Walter White, how he took over and he tried to reform the NAACP, and a lot of black people weren't having it. They didn't want to listen to him. And then it talks about the Black Panther Party, which was one of my favorite parts of this book because I like the Black Panthers. Like, they rock. They formed a lot of things that black people use, like WIC. WIC came from, the government took that, of course, but the Black Panther Party was dope. Okay, I need a beret for real. Okay, if I was back in then, I'd be a Black Panther. But the Black Panther Party started from two black men who were just tired of, you know, the government Caucasian ways. So they made their own systems to advocate for their own people in their own way. Um, so this book talks about. I skipped that. Oh, I did, Danielle. Angela Davis. Went from Angela Davis over to how black people are minor, how white people were major, and ghetto. Oh yeah. So the ghetto did not start, and I'm sure y'all know this. Okay, I know y'all know this. The word ghetto did not start from black people. The word ghetto started from the Jewish community. I knew this before reading this too. And that's how they got hoaxed with this word, ghetto. But then as time changed and with these people, I'm gonna name them off too, they started changing how people were worded, who was under certain things. The ghetto meant these, but now we're gonna change it over to these people because that's just what we feel like doing. The ghetto and minority people become synonymous for black people, which the ghetto was not. It was for It was for the Jewish community, right? It's crazy. Black people owning and controlling their own neighborhoods and futures, free of white supremacy, was what Black Panther was part of their 10-point system. So their 10-point platform. I want to read it out just because I love the Black Panther Party, even though they're not around anymore. Power to determine the destiny of our black community, full employment, an end to the robbery of the black community by the government, decent housing, real education, for all black men to be exempt from military service, an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people, freedom for all black prisoners, for all black people on trial to be tried by a jury of their peers, peace and black representation in the United Nations. That was their 10-point system. So then the book flows over to Angela Davis. I like Angela Davis. I do. I've always admired her. And it speaks on how Ronald Reagan really sought after her and how they kept firing her from her job because they felt like she was a part of the Black Panther Party and they felt like she was in on these cops being murdered. The book gives full detail of that whole situation, and she wasn't in on it. She just knew the guys because she was in jail with certain people and knew certain people. So because it was like guilty by association, so Ronald Reagan got her to be fired numerous times. And then, from University of California at San Diego was where she taught one time, and then she taught another time at UCLA. And so him and his power moves, he kept getting her fired because he just didn't like her and he felt like she was a part of something, but she really wasn't. And because she spoke out for black people, he didn't like that either. So the book describes that. This book describes the actual trial of that. And there was a 17-year-old boy she helped named Jonathan Jackson. She helped him. They had a problem with that. A week later, Angela Davis was charged with murder. Okay, she got out. She got out though. She didn't do the full time. So I'm in the book with this. So there were some things in the book that just caught my attention, stuff that I never knew. So there was two things that really caught my attention, which were a Harvard medical degree holding Washington Post columnist named Charles Hammer invented the term crack baby. Right, shut up. Yep. And it was a term used to blanket a generation of black children born from drug-addicted parents, saying that they were now destined for inferiority. That they were subhuman, that the drugs had changed their genetics. And that was from a Harvard medical degree holding person, okay? Whew. What's the next aha moment I found? Which was the other one? In 1995, a Princeton University scholar named John DiLilio I might be saying it wrong. Described black 14 to 17-year-olds as super predators. I never heard of the term super predators, but this Princeton scholar, he labeled black 14 to 17-year-olds as super predators, which I'm like, that's my child. My child ain't no super predator, but that's how they made up their own little words and labeled a lot of our African American kids with these labels, and these labels have stuck for years. And then there was another aha moment in this book. There's a whole lot. There's a whole lot. Scientific evidence that the races are 99.9% the same was brought forth on June 26, 2000. That was just 20 years ago and some change, because it's just now 21. So the year 2000 was when people were given scientific evidence that human beings were the same despite the color of their skin. So I am not a monkey. Shut up. I am the same. I am the same. But it was a scientist who brought this forth under Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton was the one who got this out, who told people. So Hispanic, Asian, Caucasian, or African American, a scientist cannot tell race from one another. But there was the 0.1% still out there, and that 0.1% difference between humans must be racial. Foolishness, foolery at its best. Just foolishness at its best. And the last aha moment that I'm going to give you guys is it talks about the No Child Left Behind Act. I worked in education for a little spell, and I do know about the No Child Left Behind Act, and it just goes into detail about how the politics set high goals and test often to see if those goals are being met. And basically the inner city schools who are less funded, when the kids don't have the resources to gain the information for those tests, they score lower, which means funds are lower because they don't get the funding that the other, suburban schools get because of test scores. So if your test score is low, means you don't get no money. If your test score is high, means you get out of money. If you get out of money, you can afford the teachers. Politics. Yep. So this book is really good. And then it goes right on into Black Lives Matter. And it talks about the ladies who founded it, Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opal Tometi, and their impact. This book is so worth the buy. Like, it really is. And I suggest you all go out there, buy Stamped, buy the one before, Stamped from the beginning, and then Stamped. Read them both. And I thank you all for tuning in tonight. I will see you next Friday when I post my next book. That one's going to be a good one too. It won't be as long as in detail. I skipped around on this joker for real, just to give you all a little, whatever that means, a little bit. But I enjoyed that you guys sat here through this for these 30 minutes. Even if you just put me on and you did your work while you listen to me, please go out. I'm not getting no money from this. Kudos to Jason Reynolds and Ibram Kendi. And always, y'all, keep reading, keep writing, and keep living. Peace.